So your time at QPR under Terry, there was a few injuries, which meant you were in and out of the team, and then you were dropped a couple of times. How difficult is it to sort of try and maintain your confidence and trying to maintain your happiness when you are sitting on the sidelines? And as you said before, like, you know, you all you want to do is play football, all you want to do is win the first team, and yet you're sitting on the bench, maybe coming on for 5-10 minutes. How I mean, are you then speaking to the manager in training or after match and saying, listen, Gaffer, you know, or is it something that you like keep on going to him about, or does it depend on the manager, the relationship?
I think it depends on the relationship. Obviously, you asked the question, why you're not playing, what do I need to do to improve, what's going to change those circumstances, how am I going to get the chance to play again and in a way prove yourself once again. And yeah, I was out of form. I was struggling. I'd had an injury, and that had curtailed the season a little, and then all of a sudden it gets frustrating. You lose that match fitness, so it's sort of a cycle of events that can quickly go wrong for you.
And as a striker, sometimes they say to try and play through a bad form period, and how did it normally work for you? Because obviously every striker's had them. At Tottenham, we've had Defoe and Kane that have gone through droughts, and it happens. But you just have to persevere sometimes.
You have to have a manager that believes in you, that's prepared to stick by you when you do have those periods. Certainly, you have to maintain that belief that you can do it. You go through the process as well, whether it be you're working hard and practicing, which is always a difficult one. And I learnt a great lesson from Terry Venables regarding that I was out of form at Queen's Park Rangers. I was training as I did the group sessions, but always did extra finishing after. I know Harry Kane's exactly the same because I've worked with him at Spurs doing that. But he actually stopped me one day and said, "Look, you haven't scored for a few games. You're out of form. You're out of touch, and so therefore your timing's not quite right. Don't practice." And I couldn't quite believe it. I said, "Terry, you know the way I am. I practice every day." He said, "Yeah, but you're practicing bad habits. Your timing's off. You're practicing and you're not striking the ball cleanly. So you're actually practicing bad habits." He said, "Just leave it. Wait and see. You'll score." He had that confidence and that ability. You'll score at the weekend, and then practice hard, because all of a sudden it will all come back, the timing.
Interesting.
And you're practicing he said, you're practicing perfect. You're practicing when you're striking the ball right. Yeah. And he was right. He was absolutely right. And I've said that to Harry Kane, and I've said that to other strikers as well, that when things are not so good, it's not necessarily the best thing to do to be practicing bad habits.
And maybe mentally as well. Obviously, if you as a striker, if you're practicing those bad habits, then you probably maybe get more frustrated as well, because you're not necessarily,
and it gets worse. It's a vicious circle. So it was a great piece of advice.
Yeah. Okay. So then that moves us on to Tottenham, the transfer.
My destiny.
Just down the road, actually. So we're filming in the Blue Coats pub here, which is formerly the Pride of Tottenham, and it's literally about a 7-minute walk to the Tottenham stadium. So, sort of how...
Well, that was actually Peter Shreves. When the call came, I remember Peter was manager. He'd taken over from Keith Birkinshaw, and he said, "Clive," because I'd known him from my schoolboy days training here as a schoolboy. He said, "Clive, I think you know where the ground is." And that was his sales pitch. That was it. And there I was.
And how far in advance did you know, or did you have an inkling?
The day before.
The day before.
So the Wednesday evening the call came. The Thursday morning I was here to sign, and there was no negotiations. I knew what I was going to do. I was, as I say, I always, in a way, felt I was fulfilling my destiny, following my father's footsteps.
Of course,
to arrive at White Hart Lane.
And was your dad happy about it?
He was very happy. Yeah, very happy.
I can imagine.
Yeah, he was chuffed. He was he'd actually thought that it might have happened a few years before, but he hadn't told me that.
Okay.
But again, those stories are in the book that give you an insight into how clubs are scouting, looking at players, and Spurs had been tracking me when I was in my first spell at Queen's Park Rangers. But there it was, 1984, and I was a lily white.
And so when you first walked into that dressing room and saw the players around you, who were the ones that stood out? Who were the ones you thought, wow, this is like, I've hit the big time now, there's some real stars in here?
Well, I knew most of them. Obviously, I played against them. I played with Mark Falco at schoolboy football, so we were the same age. And, you know, no one knows Ozzy Ardiles, do they? No one knows Glenn Hoddle, Ray Clements, incredible footballers. And this was my chance.
I was going to say, so did you feel like comfortable? Did you feel confident? Did you feel like you were at home, so to speak?
Absolutely, that was like the thing. But I knew, and Peter had made only one statement to me, and no disrespect to QPR. He said, "Look, Clive, you might play 1 in 4 games at QPR well." He said, "You have to play 3 in 4 games well at Spurs, if not every game." He said, basically that's what's expected, and it really was. It was something that I remembered throughout my time at the club.
Your time at Spurs was hindered by quite a serious injury. It started off being quite innocuous. It was just like a groin strain, it seemed, and then from reading the book, it went on for quite a while, and the doctors were saying that it was actually psychosomatic. It was actually in your head. How frustrating was that? So obviously, you know, you were trying to play, you were trying to train, and you know, doubling up in pain when you did, and then when you tried to kick a ball, and then they're saying, oh, it's all in your head.
Yeah, it was the most frustrating period, really, because, as I say, 1, you want to be fit, 2, you want to be playing, and 3, you don't want to be told it's in your head and you're making it up. Really, that you don't know the person, and certainly don't know me if you're being that's been said. But
so initially, how long did you think you'd be out for when you first?
Well, when it was first done, it was diagnosed as a groin strain that would take 4 to 6 weeks. 8 weeks later, I had surgery, 2 hernia repairs, which they thought would solve the problem. I worked to get back from that, and then played in a game, New Year's Day game it was, where I slipped on a pretty icy pitch and literally passed out.
Wow.
And that was when when I came round, the doctor said, "Oh, it's all in your head," which didn't go down too well. But thankfully, I ended up seeing a surgeon in London who found the problem. I'd ruptured one of the adductor muscles.
Right. Okay.
So he repaired it, and
it just sounds very painful.
I didn't look back after that.
Good.
It took a while to get myself back to where I wanted to be. I did work very, very hard to get back, and obviously the best thing I said that happened was that I played the last 12 games of the season in 85, 86, and those 12 games gave me a chance just to get myself back up to speed before what was obviously my best season.
Well, your timing is impeccable. So formation-wise, there was a change in formation, wasn't there, which put you up front and put Hoddle behind you. Was that something that you had thought about before might happen as a tactician, or did it surprise you when he went for that?
It surprised us all. Obviously, David Pleat was in charge, and he looked at the players, and we'd started the season playing pretty much a 4-4-2, and then on the Friday before the Oxford game, he decided that this is the system that was going to suit the players that he had. There was a few who wasn't particularly keen on it, I have to say that. We had the meeting, he said if anybody has got anything to say, and I remember 1 or 2 hands went up. Ray Clements had said, well, we've tried things at Liverpool and it didn't work, and Glenn wasn't particularly enamoured with it, but we went to Oxford, 20 minutes in, we were 2-0 down, we're looking at the manager in the dugout, come on, are you going to change it back? And he just he stayed calm, carry on. We ended up winning the game 4-2, played some great football, and all of a sudden just went on a run of results, and it just clicked. The whole thing worked for us.
So he had a bit more space behind you. He had a bit more time on the ball.
Well, we had five players in midfield, and everybody said I played up on my own. I didn't, because obviously we were so fluid as a team. Chris Waddle on one side, my cousin on the other side, Glenn, who was in the midfield area with the extra man. We played short passing game. We dominated possession of the ball. Teams obviously playing 4-4-2 had less players in the midfield area, and it just we flowed. And I was in a great position that I was.
You
up
were there
front,
at the end, yeah.
And the chances were there, and I was able to capitalise on that.
So you mentioned Waddle on the left. In your book, you say that he was the best with the ball at his feet.
He was the best.
It's like standing ball, as in standing position, so ready to just.
He used to get the ball between his feet, and in a standing still, and defenders would obviously try to close him down, and with a body swerve, he dragged the ball, and he was so deceptively quick, but wonderful balance, and away he'd go and beat people from a standing start, and he was the best I've ever seen at it, and. Thankfully, after that, he crossed it, and I was on the end of his crosses.
In terms of other players that you've worked with that have been special, I think you managed to actually play alongside Maradona.
Yeah, Diego came and guested in Ozzy's testimonial, and him and Glenn on the night, I've always said, we're playing on another planet, because I played in the game, I scored the winning goal that night, but I was a spectator. It was one of the only games I can remember where I was enthralled by the game, but you just wanted Glenn or Diego to get the ball because they were playing a different game. Yeah. It was like they were just beyond belief, absolutely incredible. It was just a pleasure to be playing in that game.
Brilliant. So you mentioned it before, obviously your best season. How far into the season were you thinking about records in terms of like goal scoring records? Was it quite early on, or at any season in terms of records? Did you think about stuff like that, or
no? I just wanted to score in every game. That was the intention. That's what I set about doing. That particular season, Jimmy Greaves, the great Jimmy Greaves, on his TV show that he had at that time, interviewed me, and that was the first I had any thought or was given any idea. And he said, and I'd scored 11 goals in the first 10 games, and he said, "You know what, son?" He said, "You can break my record." And I had no idea what Jimmy's record was.
Right, okay.
And I was told, and the club record of 46 it was at that time, and I although he told me, I remember saying to him on the TV show, I said, "Jim, no, that's impossible. No one's ever going to get near that." But it was semi-final day at Villa Park where I broke that record, and obviously went on to score in the cup final, which was the 49th, and it's a record I'm really proud to hold. And as Jim said to me that day, I still say today, if anyone breaks it, they will deserve to break it, and I'll be the first to shake their hand.
That's good to hear.
Harry could do it. He's gone close.
He has 41.
Yeah. Obviously, he was unfortunately injured, but if anyone can do it, Harry can do it.
Fingers crossed, Harry. So you spoke about the cup final there, and that was actually how I became to be a Spurs fan. My uncle bought me the pullout. I think it was in one of the tabloid papers, and I'd never really been into football before, and I don't know, that was it. It was like the sort of, I was done. I was a Spurs fan, and then went to my first game a few years later, and a season ticket the next year after that. So what was that game like to play in, and what was how disappointed were you as a collective at the end result in that one?
Well, I don't think anybody at the football club, anybody in the team, any of the players, the individuals ever thought that we were going to lose that cup final. It was just, it was bizarre. We went in front after 2 minutes, were pegged back. Obviously, it was nip and tuck. Whenever we did anything, Coventry seemed to respond. Went to extra time, and then the unfortunate own goal, which obviously cost us. So.
You've been to a final before against Tottenham.
That's right, yes, in '82. Although the second minute in that, I got injured playing for QPR, so it was almost a non-event for me. The '82 Cup final. This was my time, and I had nothing in my mind other than winning the cup for the club. Obviously, having scored in the second minute, you think this is it. You actually think it's going to happen, but. Destiny as it is, it never did, and we lost in extra time. One of the best, people say one of the best cup finals that was played.
Yeah, no, it was incredible.
But obviously we were on the end of a disappointing result.
So you do touch on your England career in the book. Is there any sort of is there feelings of disappointment with regards to that, or would you have liked more opportunities, or was it a case of just the manager not necessarily going for you at the time, or the fact that he did have obviously a highly successful team at the time that you were just struggling to fit in?
Yeah, there was a couple of guys by the name of Beardsley and Lineker who
you might have heard of them,
who scored a few goals. They had a great understanding, a good relationship. Gary was prolific, and I think there are times in your life when you actually realise, my chances are going to be limited, and that was exactly how it was. I would have loved to have played 50 times for England and scored 25 goals if that was possible, but that didn't happen for me. But that's in my time, I didn't get that chance really.
So we're going to now whiz through the rest of your clubs before we get on your return to Tottenham as a coach. So obviously we went to Bordeaux, then Man City, Chelsea, West Ham, Millwall, Carlisle.
Carlisle was at the very end, and I knew
How was it? What was it like then, sort of coming to Rennes? Because obviously you said before you'd always wanted to be a footballer, always thought about nothing else. Yeah. Now coming to the flip side of that sort of like age and career. Well, that's is it a worrying time? It is.
That's why I went to Carlisle, because I wanted just people to know that I'd go and play anywhere, and I would have done. I was struggling with a calf injury. I knew that my days were numbered. In my heart of hearts, I knew that it wasn't going to go on forever. And yeah, when it actually hits you, it's quite devastating, because it was all I knew.
Exactly,
it was what I did.
That's what a lot of people say, and I think a lot of footballers really do struggle with it, because you obviously have some that, like yourself, have moved into the media side of things, some that have moved on to coaching, some that are going into like property, like Fowler and places people like that. Yeah. But it is hard. It's really, really hard, especially from an early age. And if you haven't had necessarily that further education that you mentioned you didn't get because you went straight into the academy. Yeah. So it's difficult. Did you have any plans at that time for further things to do?
No, I wanted to stay in the game. Obviously, the time of things and the way things unfold. Sky Sports had just launched. Obviously, it was in its infancy. A guy that I'd worked for at Granada TV in Manchester came up with the idea of Soccer Saturday, and because of that, he asked me what I was going to do. He knew I was at the end of my career, and would I be interested in doing the pilot shows for that? And of course, it was football. I was talking about it. I can't play it anymore, so now let's talk about it.
Yeah,
and absolutely. It was great. It was obviously something that I moved into and really enjoyed.
And the London Monarchs? Well, the when and what, the how, the when, the I mean, that's quite a cool story.
It was amazing. I was 4 years finished. I was working at Sky. Sky covered what then was called NFL Europe, which was a European league that was played in the summer when NFL was obviously out of season. And they had national kickers in each team. Gentleman by the name of Oliver Luck, who was Andrew Luck's father. Andrew just retired. He's a big quarterback. Oliver, his dad, was a quarterback in his day. He was an NFL Europe president, and he just said to me, Clive, he said, we'd like you to kick for the Monarchs. And I was, yes, Oliver, I don't know who you are, and I think you're winding me up. But all of a sudden, I was being given an opportunity to play another professional sport.
Wow.
At that stage in my life, and I just, all I remember saying to him was, well, Oliver, I will try. But I have to say, if I'm not confident about doing this, I'm not going to set myself up.
Yeah, sure.
And he went, absolutely understand that. Sent me to a kicking coach at Miami Dolphins, and hey presto, there I was kicking for the Monarchs.
So you went on the pitch to give it a few. But did you ever have to get in? Did you ever
a couple of scrimmages? Where the holder fumbles the ball, the game's live.
Yeah.
And it is
Did
crazy.
you not run the other way?
Well, you can't, because the thing is, it happens so quickly.
Oh wow!
And it's so explosive that you're in it. You can't. Basically, you've just got to be prepared to get ready for a car crash. That's exactly what it is, a car crash.